I'm going to talk about the 5 most useful languages to learn. I get tons of questions, usually asking, what language should I learn? Should I learn Japanese? Should I learn Spanish? Should I learn French? Honestly, I can't tell you what language you should learn because I have set a list of languages I always wanted to learn, and that's what I did. And I learned languages that I liked because I think there's no sense in learning a language that you don't enjoy. So I learned languages I liked, and I learned languages also according to their usefulness, which languages I thought for me would be the most useful. So according to what your goals are, what you want to do in life, what you want to do as a job, where you want to work, you have to set goals and you have to think about the usefulness of the languages you're learning. I mean, there's no point in learning Swahili if you're sitting in Germany and you never want to go where Swahili is spoken. It's the same with Russian, for example. People ask me, why don't you learn Russian? I mean, I have never been to Russia, and honestly, I am not really interested in the culture and country as such. I haven't found an interest up until now. Maybe I will in a later future, but when I had the option to learn Russian, I didn't want to, and I prefer other languages over Russian because I have more contact with them. I have more friends who speak Spanish, who speak Portuguese, so I can practice. There's no point in learning Russian. 0 people around me who speak Russian. I have no contact with the language, with the people, with the culture. I know nothing about Russian, so that's why. So according to those kind of things, you have to know what your priorities are. The top 5 list of my languages that I learned, which I personally find the most useful. So I'm not saying that those are languages that are universally useful, but I think for me, they are. So if you want to know about the list, then stay tuned. So obviously I'm going to start with the most useful language, and that is, surprise, English. Of course, I think anywhere you are in the world, you are going to speak English if you don't speak the language which is spoken in the country. So the first instinct is always to speak English. I mean, even if the people don't speak English, you're always going to try and speak English because that's a universal language. And so in many countries, English is the first language the first foreign language that you learn at school. And that was the same case for me. It was English. So I find English the most useful. I mean, everywhere I travel, if I don't speak the language which is spoken in the country, the first language usually which you will speak with the locals is English. Second one, I found French also very useful. So after learning English, I opted to learn French. And why? I opted to learn French because I always liked the language. I had an interest in learning it. I liked the sound of it. So that was the first thing. The second thing was also, I figured when I learned French, French is not only spoken in France, but French is also spoken in many African countries. It is spoken in South American countries, in the Caribbean, on the Polynesian Islands. It is spoken in so many countries. So once you speak French, you're not only gonna get by in France, but also wherever, if you're in South America or if you're in other countries or other continents. So that's very useful. And I think one of the most required languages also, as for if you're applying for jobs or anything like that, if you want to do something, if you want to go abroad, English and French are in many countries the base. If you want to work for foreign corporate companies, for example, English is the base. But if you speak English, for example, here in Germany, it's like nothing. You have to have at least a second foreign language, and that foreign language is mostly French. So if you speak English and French, that's like a good base. So that's why I opted for French. Okay, third language I opted for was Spanish. Why Spanish? After French, I figured, Spanish is also widely spoken. Spanish is spoken not only here in Spain, but it is spoken in almost all of South America, in the Caribbean, in North America. So when you speak Spanish, you're pretty much good to go anywhere almost. So you have almost the whole continent of South America. That's why, if you haven't figured, the reggaeton artists, they speak Spanish, they sing Spanish, but everything they do is they have billions and billions of views of they're so successful in what they do, even though they do it just in Spanish, because they cover almost the whole continent plus North America, where there are a lot of Spanish speakers. So it's kind of a strategic thinking, because if you think okay, let me learn Spanish, okay, with Spanish I can work basically in South America. I can work in Central America. I can work in North America. I can work here in Europe with Spanish. So in so many different places. So that was my goal. That's why I also studied trilingual international management. And trilingual international management had English, French, and Spanish. So it covered like the whole South American continent, South America and Central America. So I had like a bunch of business subjects in Spanish. So basically I could go to Colombia tomorrow and work there. I could go to Argentina and work there. And that's the thing. Spanish is so useful and powerful. That's why I opted to learn Spanish. Once I had Spanish, I opted to learn Portuguese. So I figured Spanish and Portuguese are so similar. Okay, I'm good with Spanish. So I have almost like all South America and Central America covered. And what biggest country is there in South America? Brazil. And what is spoken in Brazil? Portuguese. So once I have Portuguese, I will have like all of South America covered. I'll have French, Spanish, and Portuguese. So in case I want to go there, I want to work there, I could do that easily. In case I want to work in African Portuguese speaking countries, I could do that with Portuguese. So that's the utility. And also in case I want to work in Portugal, I could do that with Portuguese. So once you have Spanish, it's very easy to dive into Portuguese, because Portuguese is a little more complicated and more difficult than Spanish, but Spanish is like easy. So I always advise to learn Spanish first rather than Portuguese, because it makes things so much easier if you learn Spanish first. So learn Spanish first, and then you can go to Portuguese. And once you have those languages, you can get by like anywhere. I tell you, like I travel to so many countries, and I'm basically never in a place where I don't speak the language, because if you have those languages covered, you are like basically universal. You're a universal person. Like you will never be somewhere, like rarely be somewhere where people will not understand you. If they don't speak Portuguese, neither Spanish or French, a little English will always get you by here in Germany, in the Netherlands, like almost anywhere. So when I did my undergrad studies, I had the choice of choosing these languages that I hadn't studied yet. Okay, I have already French, I have Spanish, I have Portuguese, I speak German. So what language can I study next? So I was like, Arabic, Japanese, or Chinese. So I weighed down the options for me. Honestly, I wanted to learn Japanese rather than Chinese, because I was always interested in like learning an Asian language, and the first thing was like Japanese. But then I figured, okay, if I learn Japanese, where would I be able to speak Japanese? In Japan. So and I'm like, okay, there are like a lot of Japanese companies, foreign companies. Even if you're not in Japan, you can work with Japanese people. But then I figured, yeah, but how likely is it that you are in business with Japan if you don't specifically want to work like with Japan as a country as such? So I was like, Chinese. Should I learn Chinese? And at that time, like nobody was studying Chinese. So it was so rare. Everyone was like, what do you want to do with Chinese? So I figured, okay, I study Chinese because China like is so big as a country, and even though you would never go to China, I mean, you meet Chinese people everywhere. I mean, Chinese are everywhere. You go to North America, to South America, you go to Africa, to Asia, of course. Like Chinese people are everywhere in this world. So you're always gonna encounter Chinese people to speak to or like to do business with. So this was my main point, my thinking as to why I want to study Chinese. And in the long run, like it was totally worth it because I was right. Okay, so those were the 5 most useful languages for me personally, and I think those are universal languages. If you think I'm right in some points or in all of the points, go ahead and learn those languages, but I'm not going to tell you which languages you should learn because it's basically up to you. So as I said, you have to know why the languages are useful for you personally. So according to that, you just make your own list of what you want to learn, and that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.